At Christmas dinner, Dad announced, "You burden and you can't live with us anymore." Next day, when I packed my things and told them that I was stopping paying the bills, Dad. Christmas dinner was almost over when my father put down his fork, looked me straight in the eye and said, "You are a burden and you can no longer live with us." At first I thought I had misheard him. My mom let out this weird nervous laugh, like she wasn't sure he meant it. But then he just sat there, staring at me, waiting for a reaction. The room fell silent. My younger sister, Lily, froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. She looked at me wide-eyed, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. I swallowed the piece of ham I was chewing and put my fork down. "What?" "You heard me," he said. "You've overstayed your welcome. You need to move out." I just sat there, trying to process. I was 23. I had a steady job and could have moved out a long time ago, but I stayed because they needed me. I paid the electric bill, the internet, groceries, most weeks, things they couldn't afford because my dad had been unemployed for years and my mom only worked part-time. I wasn't a burden. I was the reason the lights were still on in that house. And now, out of nowhere, I was being kicked out like some useless freeloader? Mom finally spoke up. "Maybe we should talk about this later." "No," Dad interrupted. "This is my house. I make the rules. And I say he's done here." Lily put down her fork. She was only 16, and I could tell she was scared. She stared at our parents like she didn't even recognize them. If they could throw me out so easily, what did that mean for her? I took a deep breath. I wasn't going to argue or beg. If they wanted me out, fine. But they weren't ready for what that really meant. I leaned back in my chair. "All right," I said. My dad sat up straighter, like he'd won some imaginary battle. My mom still looked uncomfortable, but she didn't say anything. Maybe she was in shock, or maybe she just didn't care as much as I thought she would. I stood up, grabbed my plate, and carried it to the sink. I didn't want to give them the reaction they wanted. Instead, I looked at Lily, who was still sitting there, tense and confused. I gave her a small nod. She was the only one at this table I still cared about. Dad took a sip of his drink as if nothing had happened. Mom went back to picking at her mashed potatoes. Lily kept looking at me as if she wanted to say something, but she didn't. I didn't stay to finish dinner. I just walked out. I didn't say another word that night. I went straight to my room, closed the door, and started packing. I wasn't going to waste my time trying to understand why they were doing this. If they wanted me gone, then I was gone. But that also meant they would lose everything I had paid for. And I wasn't going to warn them. I packed in silence, but I could hear them talking downstairs. My mom's voice was low and scared, my dad's was firm, like he was trying to convince her of something. I caught bits and pieces. "He's old enough. We can handle it. He should have moved out years ago." An hour later, Lily knocked on my door. I opened it, and she slipped in, closing it behind her. She looked upset, her eyes red as if she'd been crying. "What the hell was that?" she whispered. "I don't know," I said, stuffing my laptop into my bag. "But I'm leaving tomorrow." She shook her head. "That's crazy. You pay for everything. They can't even afford food without you. Not my problem anymore." She bit her lip, obviously trying to hold back more tears. "Where are you going?" "I'll figure it out." The truth was, I had some money saved up, but I hadn't planned on moving out so suddenly. I'd have to find a place fast, maybe stay with a friend for a while. But I wasn't worried. I'd be fine. They wouldn't. Lily hesitated. "Can I dash?" She stopped herself. I knew what she was going to ask. She wanted to come with me. But she was still in high school, and as much as I hated leaving her behind, I couldn't take her with me. "You know they'd never let that happen," I said. She looked at the ground. "Yeah." I finished packing, and she just stood there, like she didn't want to go. Finally she sighed. "You're going to regret this." I grinned. "I know." The next morning, I left before they even woke up. I carried my bags downstairs, loaded my car, and took one last look at the house. No sadness, no regret. Just relief. Then, as I was pulling out of the driveway, I opened my banking app and removed my name from every bill. Electric, internet, water, even the Netflix account. I had paid for them all. Without me, everything would be shut off within the month. I smiled, put my car in drive, and drove away without looking back. For the next few days, I crashed at my friend Jake's apartment while I looked for a place of my own. His couch sucked, his dog Max wouldn't stop staring at me while I tried to sleep, and his roommate kept asking if I was staying forever. But none of that mattered. Because I was free. No more paying for a house I didn't even want to live in. No more pretending to respect a man who had no problem kicking me out at Christmas dinner. No more being treated like a walking ATM. I was finally doing something for myself. Then, 3 days after I left, my phone started ringing. At first I ignored it. 7 missed calls from my mom, 2 from my dad, which was shocking because he never called me, and a couple of texts from Lily. I ignored those 2 until she sent this. They're freaking out. The power's been cut off. I grinned. They really thought the bills would magically pay themselves. Then another text. Dad's losing his mind. He said you did something to the house. Oh, this was getting good. I could just picture him stomping around in the dark, yelling at my mom while she cried about the Wi-Fi being down. An hour later, another call. This time I answered. The second I picked up the phone, my mom's voice hit me like a hurricane. Kevin, we don't know what happened. The power's out, the internet's down, the water bill dash. You didn't pay, I said simply. Silence. Then, in a lower voice. You paid for these? I almost laughed. Are you serious? Who else did you think was paying for them? Your father said. She cut herself off. I already knew. My father was too proud to admit that he had no idea how things worked. He probably told her that everything was fine, that the house would run like magic, even without me. Not my problem anymore, I said. Kevin, please, we didn't mean dash. I hung up. I thought that was the end of it. They'd figure it out. Maybe my dad would finally get off his ass and get a job. Maybe my mom would pick up more hours. Maybe they'd sell something to keep the lights on. Either way, not my problem. Then, the next morning, I woke up to a message from my bank. Fraud alert, suspicious login attempt detected. I sat up quickly, my heart pounding. I checked my email, 3 more alerts. Someone had tried to access my account. And I already knew who it was. I logged on immediately and scanned through my transactions. Nothing had been taken yet, but there it was, an attempted password reset. Another failed login. Then a third. I clenched my jaw. My dad must have really been desperate. I called Lily. She answered right away. I was just about to call you, she whispered. Dad's freaking out. He keeps yelling about money. He was on the computer all morning dash. I exhaled sharply, trying to get into my bank account. She was silent for a second. Then she cursed under her breath. Does he have my old passwords? I asked. Probably, she admitted. You know how Mom used to keep them in that little notebook by the computer? I knew it. My dad must have been going through that thing, hoping I'd be stupid enough to still be using the same passwords from high school. Kevin, Lily whispered. He's really pissed. I think. She hesitated. I could hear shouting in the background. My dad's voice, slamming doors. Then my mom, crying. I think he's going to do something stupid, Lily said. Lily's words sent a shiver down my spine. I think he's going to do something stupid. I gripped my phone tighter. What do you mean? What did he say? She lowered her voice. He's saying that you ruined us. That you did this on purpose to screw him. He's talking about calling the cops. I almost laughed. For what? Not paying his bills? I don't know, she hissed. He's losing it. Mom's crying, says she'll talk to you, But he won't listen. He's saying things like, he's not going to get away with this. Kevin, I think he wants to go after you. That wiped the smile off my face. I had expected my dad to get desperate, to beg, maybe even try to make me feel guilty. But for him to think he could get revenge on me? That was a whole new level of stupid. Lock your door, I told her. If he does something crazy, call me. I hung up and immediately changed every password I had: bank accounts, email, streaming services, even my Amazon login. Then I called my bank and told them that someone had tried to hack me. They locked my account so tight that even I had trouble getting in for a few hours. I thought that was the end of it. I was dead wrong. That night, Jake and I were chilling in his apartment, playing some stupid game on his Xbox, when someone banged on the door. Hard. Jake stopped the game. Are you expecting someone? I wasn't. And I already had a bad feeling. I got up, walked to the peephole, and felt my stomach drop. It was my dad. He was standing in the hallway, fists clenched, breathing like a bull about to charge. Who is it? Jake called. I stepped back from the door. My dad. Jake stood up. Dude, what's going on? Another bang. Kevin, open the door. I didn't move. He banged again, harder this time. I know you're in there. You think you can just walk away from this? Jake glared at me. Dude, should we dash? Before he could finish, my dad kicked in the door. That was it. I grabbed my phone and called 911. My dad just showed up at my apartment, I told the dispatcher. He's banging on the door, yelling at me, and he just tried to kick it in. Jake took a step back. Kevin, this is crazy. I met his eyes. Yeah. I know. I held the phone to my ear as my dad kept yelling. You ungrateful little, you think you can just walk away? You owe us. You dash. Sir, officers are on their way, the dispatcher said. 2 minutes later I heard sirens. Then my dad's voice cut out. A knock on the door. Police! Open up! I opened the door just in time to see 2 officers handcuffing my dad. His face was flushed, his chest heaving, but when he saw me standing there watching, his eyes changed. There was no regret. No embarrassment. Just pure hatred. You did this, he growled as they led him away. I just stood there, watching, unmoved. Because the truth was, he did it to himself. They took my dad away that night, but I knew it wasn't over. Lily called me an hour later. Mom's losing it, she said. She's crying and saying it's all your fault. Yeah, that sounds about right. She keeps saying you have to fix this. She's already calling people, trying to get bail money. I almost laughed. With what money? Silence. Because we both knew they had none. No electricity, no internet, no savings. And now no father figure to yell at everyone while pretending to be in control. Without me, they were sinking fast. I should have felt bad. But all I felt was relief. Keep an eye on her, I told Lily. If she does anything crazy, call me. And sure enough, Lily texted me the next morning. Mom's selling your stuff. I froze. Then I called her. She picked up right away, voice sharp. I told you to fix this. Are you selling my stuff? A pause. Then, bluntly. We need money, Kevin. I clenched my jaw. So you're stealing from me. You don't live here anymore. She snapped. You left all this behind. It's in our house. That makes it ours. She had no remorse. No guilt. Just entitlement. I'm calling the cops, I said. Don't you dare. I hung up. Then I called the police. 2 hours later I got a call back. We talked to your mother, the officer said. She wasn't happy, but she's agreed to hold your things until you can pick them up. I texted Lily. I'm coming over. But I should have known they weren't ready. Because when I pulled up to the house, something made my stomach drop. My car. Sitting in the driveway. It shouldn't have been there. Because I had left it at Jake's apartment. I turned off the engine, my heart pounding. My car wasn't just here, it was being driven. The front seat was folded back like someone had been sitting in it, my glove compartment was open, and worst of all, the gas tank was almost empty. I clenched my fists. They had stolen my car. Before I could get out, the front door swung open. My mother stepped out with her arms crossed. "You called the cops on me," she said. "You stole my car." I shot back. She scoffed. "It was just sitting there. You weren't using it." I stared at her, trying to process the insanity of this logic. "It's my car. How did you even get it?" She didn't answer, but I already knew. They had a spare key. "Mom," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "if you don't give me my key, I'm calling the cops." Again. Her expression flickered, just for a second. Then, without a word, she stormed inside. A minute later she came back and threw the key at me. It hit my chest and landed in the grass. "There," she spat. "Happy?" I picked it up, keeping my anger in check. "I'm taking my things. And then I'm leaving. For good." I walked past her, straight into the house. Lily was waiting in the hall, looking tense. "She took your laptop and pawned it," she whispered. I closed my eyes. Breathe in. Breathe out. I turned to my mother. "Where's my laptop?" She lifted her chin. "I told you. We needed money. That was it." I pulled out my phone, dialed 911 for the second time that week, and let her watch. "Yes, I want to report a stolen vehicle and stolen property," I said, staring her dead in the eye. "My mom just admitted that she pawned my laptop without permission." The color drained from her face. This time, she was the one who had to deal with the cops. The moment my mother realized I wasn't bluffing, she panicked. "You can't do this," she hissed, her voice low. "I'm your mother." I ignored her. "Yes, officer, I have proof that she admitted to taking my belongings and pawning them," I said into the phone. "I want to press charges." Lily stood frozen, her eyes darting between us. My mother's hands were shaking now. She looked completely taken aback, like she thought she could keep pushing and I'd never push back. "Kevin," she tried again, softer this time, like she was begging. "We're struggling. Your father's in jail. I had no choice." "You had a choice," I said. "You could have worked more. You could have sold your own stuff. You could have asked for help instead of throwing me out like garbage." She blinked quickly, her face contorting. "I was angry." I laughed. "Yeah? So was I." I heard sirens outside. My mom jumped. A few minutes later, 2 police officers came through the door. "Sir, did you call about stolen property?" one of them asked. I nodded and pointed at my mother. "She took my laptop and pawned it. I want to press charges." My mom gasped as if I had stabbed her. "Kevin, don't do this." The officers turned to her. "Ma'am, is this true?" She hesitated, her eyes darting to me, to Lily, then back to the cops. I could see her calculating, trying to figure out if she could lie her way out of this. Then Lily spoke. "She told him herself. Right before he called you." My mom snapped her head at Lily so fast it was almost scary. "You little dash." "Ma'am," one of the cops cut her off. "Do you have a receipt from the pawn shop?" Her face fell. She knew what was coming. They took her outside. I watched through the window as they talked to her for a few minutes. Then suddenly handcuffs. She was struggling. Started crying. Screaming. Neighbors peered through their blinds. The whole street probably heard her wailing about how she was just a struggling mom, and how this was unfair. Lily stood beside me, staring out the window. She swallowed hard. "Is this really happening?" I nodded. "Yes." And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unfamiliar number. "You're going to regret this." My chest tightened. I read it again. Then I realized. My dad had been released on bail. The moment I saw that message, I knew exactly what had happened. Someone had bailed my dad out. And I had a pretty good idea who, probably one of his old drinking buddies. Or maybe even a distant family member who hadn't gotten the full story. Either way, he was out. And he was pissed. I showed Lily the text. Her face went pale. "Kevin, you need to leave." "No," I said. "They do." I turned to the cops who were still outside dealing with my mom. "Can I go in and get the rest of my stuff?" One of them nodded. "As long as it's okay with your sister." Lily was already moving. "Let's make this quick." We went upstairs and packed everything that was mine: clothes, old video games, even the stupid stuff I'd left behind thinking I'd come back for it one day. I wasn't coming back. Ever. As I carried the last box to my car, my mother was still crying in the driveway, begging the officers to let her go. "This is a misunderstanding. He's my son. He wouldn't do this to me." I just walked past her unbothered. She screamed my name as if that would magically change anything. I got into my car. Lily stood by my window, shifting from foot to foot. "I don't want to stay here." I sighed. "I know you don't. But you only have 2 years until you're 18. She nodded, eyes glassy. "I'll be fine. I'll just be quiet and keep my head down. Call me if anything happens." She nodded again. Then headlights appeared down the street. A car turned onto our street. My stomach dropped. My dad. He pulled up just as I started the engine. He barely had time to get out before I put it in reverse and backed into the street. He stared at me, eyes full of rage, like he was about to walk over and try something. I rolled down my window just enough to carry my voice. "You tried to come near me again. I'm filing a restraining order." His hands clenched into fists. "You think you're better than us?" I smiled. "I know I am." Then I drove away. That was the last time I saw them. I blocked my parents' numbers. Changed my banking information. Moved to a new place. And I never looked back. Lily held out for 2 years, just like she said she would. The minute she turned 18, she was gone. She moved in with a friend and went off to college. We still talk all the time. And my parents? My dad never held a job. My mom lost the house a year later. They bounced around for a while, burning bridges with family, and the last I heard, they were renting a rundown apartment in a bad part of town. They tried to reach out to me: Facebook messages, unfamiliar numbers, even letters. I never responded. Because they made their choice that Christmas dinner. And I made mine.